My girlfriend, who is 20 years younger, is pregnant. So please let's get a divorce.
Suddenly, my husband James came home with his mistress Emily and dropped this bombshell. Honestly, our marriage had been falling apart for a long time. I no longer loved James, who spent his days neglecting parenting and household duties to just have fun. Here, the divorce papers. I'll take everyone except David. I handed James the divorce papers. Then James said something shocking.
What? Take David too.
I couldn't believe it. That's impossible, because he is. Faced with the truth, James was stunned and hung his head. My name is Nancy, and I'm 51 years old. I'm a homemaker. I married my husband, James, 14 years ago. We met through a mutual friend. Back in the day, I worked as a web designer at a website development company, completely devoted to my job, and romance had been off my radar for years. Worried about me, a friend introduced me to James. James was friendly and a great conversationalist. Even though I hadn't been much for relationships, spending time with James was fun, and I thought that I could build a happy home with him. However, the path to marriage wasn't easy. James was divorced with a child. His ex-wife had left the home and the child behind, and he had mentioned that he was juggling work and parenting. When I discussed this with family and friends, they advised against it.
You absolutely shouldn't do it. You'll end up going through a hard time if you marry him.
That's what everyone told me. But for me, this obstacle only fueled my love. I felt compelled to support James, a single father. From then on, I began meeting James's son, David, more frequently.
David, what shall we do for fun today?
I'm not playing with you.
How about we grab something to eat? I'll make you anything you want.
No thanks.
David didn't warm up to me at all.
I wonder if I'm not cut out for parenting.
Whenever I felt insecure, James always comforted me.
It'll be okay. David will come around someday. Thank you for caring so deeply about him.
His words were comforting, and no matter how much David rejected me, it didn't bother me.
I'll love him as my own child once we're married.
I'm so glad I met someone like you who would love David too.
Looking back, I might have been overly confident, thinking I was becoming James's pillar of support. Half a year into our relationship, I found out I was pregnant, and we got married. Our first daughter, Olivia, was born, followed by our son, Alex, the next year. Suddenly, I was a mother of 3. I had 2 kids back to back and was constantly busy with childcare. However, James was no help at all.
Nancy, Alex is crying.
Can you please soothe him? I'm tied up right now.
Me? No way Alex wants you.
James would just keep scrolling on his smartphone while Alex cried, even as I was busy with Olivia. James always came home late, drunk. On his days off, he would leave in the morning and not return until the evening, leaving no time for us to even talk as a couple, let alone manage parenting together. And there I was, with hardly any sleep, tending to the kids every single day. The stress just kept building up.
Can you help out a little?
What? I'm tired from work. What's someone who stays home all day complaining about? Childcare is a woman's job.
I couldn't believe it.
I wouldn't have married him if I knew he was like this.
I felt deceived. But but with newborns to think about, divorce wasn't an easy option. Handling Alex, who was constantly on the move and not listening, and Olivia, who was in her terrible twos, was really tough. Still, I tried my best to be a good mother. David, James' son from his previous marriage, still kept his distance and hardly spoke to me. In the mornings, I'd wake him up for school and get him to eat breakfast, but we barely talked. With Olivia and Alex needing so much care, I had little energy left to give David the attention he might have needed. Years passed, and as David became a teenager, he hit his rebellious phase.
David, have you finished your homework or are you just playing games all the time?
Shut up.
Shut up. I'm saying this because I care about you.
That's what's annoying. Stop acting like a mom.
David often hurled insults and wouldn't listen to anything I said. Frustrated, I decided to talk to James.
Could you talk to David? He's always playing and not studying, and he doesn't listen to anything I say. Is it just his rebellious phase?
That's your fault for the way you've raised him. Isn't it because you've let him do whatever he wants that he doesn't listen?
Excuse me? I don't want to hear that from you, who's just been playing around and not doing any parenting.
You think I've just been playing around?
James stood up angrily.
Oh, for sure. You go out drinking every day. Even when I'm busy, you don't help at all.
I have to socialize for work. This is part of my job. You live off my paycheck, so don't act so high and mighty.
I was left speechless by his words. I had quit my job because I was so busy with the kids. James only gave me the bare minimum for living expenses. We were always just scraping by. Of course, I had no money of my own to spend. So, when money came up, I just couldn't say anything. However, David's behavior was getting worse, and he started coming home late at night, even though he was just in middle school.
I worry he might end up in trouble.
I tried hard to talk sense into both David and James, but they wouldn't listen to a thing. James and I ended up fighting every day. And then, James started not coming home more frequently. This went on for years. I had passed my 50th birthday, and David was now a senior in high school. I thought we'd understand each other once his rebellious phase ended, but reality proved otherwise. He still ignored me or responded with harsh words whenever I tried to talk to him. We couldn't have a proper conversation. James started coming home in the mornings, and our marriage was falling apart. Then, one day, something happened. James brought home a young woman. Who is this?
This is Emily. She's 20 years younger than me, my girlfriend, and she's pregnant. I'm sorry, but I want a divorce.
James suddenly apologized. I wasn't surprised. Honestly, I had realized long ago that James was cheating. But I never thought he would bring her to our home with our children present, which made me question his judgment. Emily was smiling at me.
Nice to meet you. I'm Emily.
I can't believe she can smile knowing she's involved in an affair. I was astounded. Emily, it turns out, is 35, 20 years younger than James. She wore revealing clothes and had her makeup done perfectly. She was a stark contrast to me, with my increasing wrinkles.
I can't see you as a woman anymore, and I want to take responsibility for my girlfriend's child. So I'm sorry, but we need to divorce.
I had reached my breaking point with their utter selfishness. I had endured for the sake of the children and our life together, but now my love for James was gone. While I struggled, he had been playing all this time. I'll make him pay. I decided to get back at James. Unlike his usual self, James was almost begging, and I simply kept nodding. All right.
What? You agreed just like that?
Maybe because I agreed so quickly, James was shocked and raised his voice in disbelief. Of course, here's the divorce papers. I'll take everyone except David. When I said that, James frowned in confusion.
What? Take David too.
I couldn't believe what James said. That's impossible. After all, he's your son from another marriage, right? We're not related by blood, and we don't get along well.
What do I care? You said you'd love him like your real son.
Yes, I did. I've treated him like a real family member. I never treated Olivia or Alex any differently, and have always tried to care for him in my own way.
Then you should take responsibility for him until the end.
At that, Emily also spoke up.
Exactly. Being a high schooler's mom is too much for me. Nancy, you take care of him.
David is also at home right now. Surely he can hear this. He never really warmed up to me during his rebellious phase, but this is just sad. He's the child you had with your ex-wife. You need to take responsibility for him.
What? You're so heartless.
Who's heartless? Who neglected parenting and left it all to me? How can you even say that? If you won't take care of him, I won't divorce you. James scratched his head in annoyance and then sighed heavily.
All right, all right. I'll take care of David.
No way. I can't be the mother to such a big kid.
Sorry, but just bear with it for a few more years.
Fine. I'll forgive you with a new bag from my favorite brand.
Okay, got it.
James said, grinning foolishly. Before they could start getting too cozy, I handed them the divorce papers. Can you sign this quickly? I need to submit it tomorrow.
All right, all right. You're such an impatient woman.
Grumbling, James signed the papers. And after receiving the completed divorce papers, I securely placed them in my bag.
By the way, are you sure you'll be okay after the divorce? You don't have a place to live or a job. It's tough on the kids too, isn't it?
James was smirking. He probably thinks I'm just a homemaker with no substantial savings. Thanks for your concern, but I'm working now, so I'll be fine.
What? You started working? But it must be just a part-time job, right? You can't live on such a low salary.
It's not part-time. I've restarted my career in web design. I just need a computer to work from home, and last month I made over $5,000, so I'm not too worried about living expenses.
Really?
James looked frustrated. Years ago, I used my savings to buy a computer, and so I started working as a web designer from home. Having previous experience, I was able to quickly secure work, and I started saving the income for the possibility of a future divorce. The reason I could file for divorce so promptly was that I had prepared everything in advance. Unaware of this, James thought he had the upper hand and looked down on me, but I just laughed it off. More importantly, are you two going to be okay?
What do you mean?
I mean child support. You'll be paying child support for Olivia and Alex until they are adults. James grimaced. It's only right since they are his children. Just because we're divorced doesn't mean he can abandon his parental responsibilities. Later, we'll go through the lawyer to discuss the amount and draft the agreement. It'll be about $600 per month for both kids.
$600 a month. That's too much.
What are you talking about? They're in middle school, and expenses like sports equipment and tutoring cost money. Child support isn't just about food and utilities, it's barely enough.
Does it really cost that much?
He probably doesn't know because he's never been involved in the household finances. Olivia and Alex, who are active in sports, need things like shoes, uniforms, and practice clothes, which are quite expensive. Plus, there are travel expenses for games. Even $300 per month for each child would be quite tough for us to manage. Right? You understand, don't you, Emily?
Understand what?
I smiled at Emily. The alimony. Since you've been cheating for years, you'll be paying alimony. I need to consult my lawyer, but it looks like it might be around $30,000, so be prepared.
What? I didn't know about this. I don't know anything.
You think not knowing is a good excuse for an adult over the age of 30? By the way, I have all the evidence lined up, so playing dumb won't work. When James started not coming home, I hired a private investigator and had an affair investigation conducted. I knew he had been dating Emily since then, and I have photos. There's no escaping it, the evidence is all there. After all, the fact that she is pregnant confirms the affair, so there's no running away from it. Despite this, perhaps unwilling to accept the reality, Emily cried out in panic.
I don't have that kind of money. I have no savings, and I'm about to have a baby.
I don't care. If you can't pay, then James, the man next to you, should. Emily grabbed James by the shoulder and shook him.
You'll pay, right?
I'm already stretched thin with child support. You pay the alimony.
Why should I? You make good money. You can afford it.
I spent it all on gifts for you. Do you have any idea how much I spent on you?
What? Seriously, you're useless. I didn't hear anything about being broke.
I almost laughed at the drastic change in their atmosphere from when they first arrived. In the end, it seems she was after the money. Otherwise, why would she be with James, who is in his mid-50s? It was James who was wrong to cheat while still married to me. But Emily, knowing about the affair and continuing the relationship, is equally to blame. I felt she also needed to compensate.
I thought we were getting married because you promised you wouldn't let me suffer, that you'd buy me whatever I wanted. I didn't know anything about paying alimony. I'm not paying it.
You can refuse, but I'll consult with my lawyer and see you in court. When I deliberately mentioned court, Emily jumped up in panic.
This is really impossible. I don't want to marry such a person and take on debt. Especially not with a son old enough to be in college. I really hate it. I'm leaving.
Wait,
Emily grabbed her bag and ran out the front door as if to escape. James tried to hold her back, but was firmly shaken off and ended up falling on his rear. It was quite a comical scene. Well, looks like she ran off on you.
not well. This is all your fault.
James angrily stood up. What? If you try anything, I'm calling the police.
You, all high and mighty. Karma will come for you for messing up this marriage.
At James' words, I burst out laughing. Karma? Then surely karma would be brought to you for neglecting me and the family. James fell silent in frustration, just glaring at me. He clearly still hasn't grasped the situation fully. I decided to hit James with another shocking fact. Just so you know, David's tuition payment is due this week.
What?
That's because he's about to start college. You need to pay the enrollment fee or he can't enroll. You're taking care of David, right? James looked dumbfounded. Having neglected David for years, James likely doesn't know about his educational progress or the costs involved.
How much is it?
It's a private college, so it's about $12,000.
$12,000. There's no way I can pay that.
Well, that's just for the first year. It'll be about $10,000 a year for tuition and fees after that. Good luck.
You're kidding?
I was surprised myself since I attended a public university and didn't know private colleges were so expensive. James, also coming from public education, probably never imagined it would cost this much.
Why would you let him enroll in such an expensive university?
It's not my fault. I told David to study, but he wouldn't listen, and you did nothing when I asked for advice.
That's no reason to just enroll him in such a college. I don't approve.
Then you should tell him that. It was David who decided to go to that university. James fell silent. Having neglected parenting, he probably doesn't know how to interact with David now. I'm not concerned about either of them anymore. Well, we'll be packing our things and leaving then. As I got up, James suddenly tried to hold me back.
Wait, let's try again.
What are you talking about?
No, I've thought it over. It's better for the kids if we don't divorce.
James looked serious. But his words about doing it for the kids are probably just excuses. You just don't want to pay child support and alimony, right? No, I can't do this with you.
Why not? I've broken up with Emily, and I won't cheat ever again. Let's start over.
Absolutely not. I couldn't imagine living with someone who neglected their parenting duties, played around, and got someone 20 years younger pregnant. You seem to be misunderstanding. It wasn't just because you wanted a divorce that I agreed to it.
Then why?
I've wanted a divorce for a long time. I just couldn't afford it before. Now that I've been working and saving money, the timing was perfect. I would have suggested it myself, even if you hadn't mentioned it.
No way.
James was speechless. Did he really think I still loved him? I'm not a saint. I can't possibly continue to love James after all the terrible things he has done.
But it's better for the kids to have both parents together. Divorce is bad for their upbringing.
At that moment, Olivia and Alex, who had been listening to our conversation, burst out of their room.
I don't want to live with a father like this.
Me neither.
Olivia, Alex, what are you saying to your father?
Olivia and Alex came to my side and glared at James.
Don't act like a father when you've done nothing. It's really creepy that someone like you keeps cheating.
I don't want to think of someone like you as my dad. It'd be much better if we just lived without you after the divorce.
You guys,
It seemed that James was more shocked than angry. He stood there with his mouth agape. Don't underestimate us because we're kids. We see everything adults do, and we can tell right from wrong. Do you really think just because you're our father, we have to like you?
I was wrong. Please forgive me. I'll do anything. I'll buy you whatever you want, take you out.
We don't need that.
I don't even want to see your face.
James finally hung his head in defeat. Did he really think he could bribe kids that are almost in middle school? If so, he was seriously underestimating them. The children knew how hard I had struggled since they were in elementary school and have always been such kind kids, worrying about me. They wouldn't easily forgive James. We packed our things, didn't say a word, James, who hadn't moved, and left the house. In the end, we divorced. Now, James is likely struggling a lot with the payments for alimony and child support. Additionally, since Emily has also given birth, he is being asked to pay child support for that child as well. Paying child support until they are adults means he'll have to continue payments even after he retires. He probably thought it was okay to engage with a younger woman, but that was a foolish mistake. Also, because he never did household chores before, his home is reportedly in terrible shape. He can hardly do laundry properly, often reuses wrinkled shirts, and is disliked by his colleagues and neighbors because of it. Both Emily and us have left him, and now, without money to spend on entertainment, I hear he is almost like a broken man, but that's no longer my concern. And so we started our new life. Olivia, Alex, you'll be late for middle school.
Coming.
Both grabbed their bags and ran to the door. David, you'll be late too if you don't hurry.
Yeah. Quit nagging.
David, now in a suit, headed for the door. The day we divorced and were about to leave the house, David was standing in the hallway. He must have been listening to our conversations all along. I couldn't leave David hanging his head, so I spoke to him. What do you want to do? After some thought, David decided to come with me. Honestly, paying for David's schooling would make our lives difficult. But David was a victim too. It must have been tough being told by his biological father that they didn't want him. His troubled behavior during his student years was largely due to his home environment. James was always out, never home, just playing around. And I was so busy taking care of Olivia and Alex that I couldn't give David the attention he needed. David was all alone during a time when he really needed to be nurtured. I couldn't just abandon David after seeing what he went through. When we arrived at the new apartment, David made a surprising statement.
I'm going to quit college, so you don't have to pay for my tuition. I'll earn the living expenses for the family.
While I appreciated David's sentiment, I honestly didn't think he could get a decent job with just a high school diploma. So I made a suggestion to him. Why don't you try studying programming?
Programming?
Yes, in this internet-driven world, knowing programming could really help with finding a job. Study hard for a year and then try to find employment. I'll cover all living expenses until then. To my surprise, David agreed readily and studied diligently. Within 6 months, he was skilled enough to get a job, and this year, he was hired as a full-time employee. The children in suits and uniforms were making noise at the entrance.
Don't talk to Mom like that. That's not nice.
Anyone who complains won't get a ride in the car.
No way. Give us a ride.
Don't crash, David.
Olivia and Alex, who used to be afraid of talking to David, had completely warmed up to him. As the three of them finished putting on their shoes, they turned back to look at me.
We're off.
They said as they left the house. I never thought this day would come. I finally feel like David is truly part of the family. I vowed once again to do my best for the happiness of the children.